What's going on, fam? Welcome to the Get the Bag podcast, episode 33. Getting
Yep,
up
yep.
there. What's going on? I'm your host, Gladia Castro. Got my co-host Tim Park.
What up, fam?
And what's up? What's up? And don't forget, show some love. Hit the subscribe button. Like this video. Follow us on Instagram. Love to really excited for this specific episode because it's the start of a 6-part series where
Hmm.
we're literally going to break down a wholesaling business from administrative all the way to disposition transactions, from the start of setting up your business to closing a deal. So really excited. I think this is something that isn't really out there in this respect. And of course, we're down to 30 minutes, so we're
Right.
going to condense as much information as we can. So really looking forward to it. But you know what? When we think of administration, like what does that consist of? You always think like boring stuff, like stuff that maybe not all of us want to do, but there are those particular people that, enjoy doing those administrative things. But I guess administrative can consist of anything of like pulling lists, organizing, cleaning your data, emails, communication, documentation, payroll, even HR, KPIs. These are all part of the administrative stuff where, when you're starting a business, you're kind of doing all of these things at once. So, things like this get usually pushed to the back burner because we go straight to acquisitions or talking to sellers, right? But at some point, to turn it into a real business, you have to orchestrate these things. And usually people eventually hire a VA or of some sort. So we're going to break those down to give you guys a better sense of what that looks like and, kind of go from there. But um, I guess for you, Tim, because you've started a few businesses, like how was the like administration kind of part of your process?
I think administration is, I think part of the process, my process is that I kind of think of it as not the sexy part of whatever you're doing. It's just
Right.
things you do need to get done and have within your company
Mm-hmm.
to make it function, right? So it's a part of the recipe. It's not the main, it's not the meat and potatoes of, your recipe.
Right.
So, but you need that. Um, so you need those elements or those pieces for, your recipe to turn out good, so your
Right.
business to function, your business to be successful. So a lot of the processes that we're going to go over um, are parts of that ingredients that you need for your recipe to make your wholesaling business
Right.
successful, or any business successful, because
Yeah.
if you can break down all the administrative duties that you have to do in your business, then it's going to um, add value to your business and make it more successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned earlier, typically this portion of the business is sort of ignored in the beginning, or it's kind of like we just do the basics, right? Like if when we talk about pulling lists or data, that's all usually what's done by us, right? In the beginning, like
Hmm.
we bought a list, we cleaned it up, formatted it correctly, skip traced it, and then uploaded it to our dialer if we were doing that, or SMS. There wasn't really any logic to it. We just did it as we were kind of learning the process. But as
Right.
you become more experienced, these sort of tasks become, if you want to put a cost to a task, this is a very low cost task
Hmm.
where you don't want to be so focused in on that, right?
Hmm.
Like eventually you want to hire because you want to focus on the higher paying tasks that make money, and
Right.
this is all part of it. But just to kind of give you guys an idea in terms of the mindset of like you shouldn't be doing this forever unless you have like like really good process down. But at some point you want to hire somebody that's like an admin VA to kind of organize everything, like even in like your calendar,
Hmm.
stuff like that. So just something to think about going into when it comes to administration. But kind of starting off in terms of data. in your lists? Like what sort of areas can we gather data? I mean, I
Right.
think last week we talked about prop stream. I think you use batch
Hmm.
leads, right?
Yeah,
Tim, and it's
that's correct.
very similar.
Yeah. So you can grab lists from and data from batch leads. I use that constantly.
Hmm.
Prop stream is a good one. List source is we call it the list source hack, where you can
Yep.
pull zip codes for top selling homes in that particular
Hmm.
area. And then we have GeoPoint where you can get another list. So early in my career, it was GeoPoint and list source,
Yeah.
and now I've kind of upgraded to batch leads on that. But
Right.
it's, and then I think, you can go to the county, driving for dollars as well too. So those are some ways that I know I've used all of those. So
Hmm.
what about yourself?
Yeah, I've used pretty much all of it. County, it does vary on the market.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sure if you go on YouTube and type in like Los Angeles County code violation, sometimes like you really have to do some digging. But sometimes it's like not available. You have to call in and get access to it. But that's always a much affordable way than actually buying a list. Sometimes it's free as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I've used the list source hack to kind of identify where are the hot zip codes. So if you guys aren't aware, just literally you can Google or YouTube list source hack, and I'm sure there's plenty of videos on the like how to do that. Driving for dollars, I've done that plenty of times, especially virtually. I think
Yeah.
I mentioned last week they have a Chrome extension where connects to Google Maps. So I've used that so many times. So the data is kind of like your backbone. It's like you need data to market.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have
Mm-hmm.
data, you can't do anything. So that's always a good place to start. And then kind of the next thing is like how do you like once you have data, like where do you go from there? And there's different ways like starting off, right? Like in terms of cleaning your data, of course, you can skip trace the entire list.
Mm-hmm.
But I've talked about too of like how I've utilized a tool called REI Sift
Mm-hmm.
that acts as a data management tool
Mm-hmm.
where it stores all my data. It's practically my CRM where I can kind of see what's going on and it can kind of show me like, hey, these out of this list that you uploaded that I haven't skip traced yet, these are vacant. These are stacked onto another list. Or if you want to just focus on absentee vacants, I can create those filters, pull
Mm-hmm.
that data, and then skip trace it.
Right.
So, don't want to get too much caught up in the weeds, but
Right.
I think it's important to know like where are you going to store your data. Sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
Google Sheets is what
Right.
it is, and hey, that's a good way to start. But it's important to start thinking of like how am I going to organize? How can I keep track so I'm not double dipping and spending
Right.
more money like marketing to this record that I've already
Right.
marketed to. So I think even last week, right, Tim, we talked about skip tracing data, like how
Mm-hmm.
to clean data.
Exactly.
Right, like batch skip tracing.
Right.
I don't know if you use Fiverr as well.
I have
Um,
in the past. I don't use it anymore. I mainly stick with like batch skip tracing, batch
right,
leads as well too. So that allows me to kind of filter everything that I need to and not double pay for the same name or same addresses as well. So you're
right,
saving costs on that. And I believe REI skip also helps you with that when you're
yep,
cleaning your data because you'll get a lot of duplicates. It's just depending because it might be the same name with 5 different addresses or something like that. So you don't need
right,
to skip trace all 5 different addresses. So those
right.
are just the little tip for you guys so you're not paying extra.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing that's also part of administrative is also like formatting the data correctly. Usually, trying to like once you've cleaned the data and like everything's good, you have to format it a certain way
Hmm.
to even upload it to market to it, right?
Correct.
To the
Yeah.
dialer. So these are all like little things that, we all start doing at some point and then we eventually hand off because again, if you're trying to close deals, you don't want to be like I would consider this a dollar an hour task. So, what one thing to identify is like once it starts becoming repetitive where you're like, okay, I'm over this, and you
Mm-hmm.
do have some funds, like that's usually the time where it's like, all right, it's time to hire a VA or bring on somebody to help with these things.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so moving on, we've cleaned the data, we've pulled the list, we've talked slightly a little bit about organizing your data. I mean, you definitely want somewhere, an area where you can house your
Mm-hmm.
data that you can always refer back to. I use REI Sift. Tim, I think you've used Batch Leads to kind of store
Mm-hmm.
whatever data you have, right?
Right. Right. I use batch leads, and I still use Podio. And excuse me, the Podio is free. So a lot of
Hmm.
people that don't know about Podio, check it out. It's a free CRM system. I used
Yeah.
that a lot when I first started, and then when I started to generate some more revenue, I invested in batch leads where I can store all of my leads, and then
Hmm.
CRM. They also have a text messaging thing, but we can talk about
Right.
that on a later podcast as well. So.
Right. Yeah. So just anywhere. And Podio, like I said, is free to start off with. I mean, even if you have Google Sheets, I think
Hmm.
that's good. I mean, it's better than nowhere, but there's free options you guys can use. Batch Leads does require subscription. I think it's like what, like $100 a month or so, like 97 or something.
Yeah, $97
Um,
a month.
yeah, then REI Sift, I think the lowest is $50 a month. And that doesn't, like, you can't pull lists from that like a batch leads or prop stream, but it's a place where you can, again, as I mentioned, store your data, manage it, and really create processes from there.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's really important on like creating a system like with your data. Um, a few other ones that again does not really get talked about because it's not really sexy, that I would assume is part of administration, is like maybe like HR or like a payroll
Hmm.
situation where hiring, that's
Hmm.
administrative, right? Getting all
Right.
the getting a process down to hire somebody,
Hmm.
um, focusing on your budget, accounting, like that kind of situation that we did talk about a few podcasts ago or episodes ago.
Hmm.
But these are things that to really turn your business into a real business, like you have to implement. um, Budget wise, I mean, who keeps track of their budget like that or creates a
Yeah.
system? I know you have a pretty good system, Tim, when it comes to like accounting and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think this is really overlooked, and it's really, really important to your business because you need to track what's coming in and what's going out. When we first start our businesses, we're just caring about what's going to come in, and and then we try to do the freebies and all this stuff to actually reduce costs. But then when we start making money, then it's a situation where you have to track your expenses on that, so you
Hmm.
can lower your expenses, so you're not auto paying for things that you don't need or you're not using,
Right.
and you can maximize your revenue. So I think putting in place, like I use QuickBooks,
Hmm.
allows me to track all my expenses. It allows me to track all the incoming wires that are coming in from the bank. So all the revenue that's made in different ways, you can be able
Hmm.
to track, and then have a seamless report to your accountant or tax person for the end of the year, or quarterly, whatever you're doing for your business. Then I think having that in place, and it is a learning curve for sure,
Right.
to do that. It's not easy. I've just had different businesses in the past where that's kind of helped me out, and I've learned how to utilize QuickBooks. But I would invest in taking a course on how to use QuickBooks, or how to budget, or those things that we don't really think about that are in our business, but we have
Right.
to utilize those to save money and make more revenue on it. So it's an important
Right.
aspect.
And taxes as well. I mean, that's all part of like creating a system in QuickBooks so that come
Hmm.
tax season, you're not scrambling all over the place. Like you've already kind of set a system down where it's so much easier to track, and just pull what you need to, share it. And as you make money too, I think we talked about this, is like you want to hire out like not just an administrative VA, but maybe a bookkeeper to help
Yeah,
with these sort
100%.
of things. So just again, you always got to be thinking like the next thing, like long term, because you
Mhm.
won't be doing this forever. So you have to consider that. And kind of going off of that is that ties everything together as part administrative, I think, is like the documentation portion of it
Yeah, 100%.
and creating your SOPs. What are SOPs? Do you know what they are, Tim?
Standard operating procedures.
Yep. So it's a fancy word of like documents, a
Right.
process for each thing. So
Mhm.
I think we've also talked about a little bit kind of how we've what kind of processes we have in our business. But when you imagine pulling a list from
Mhm.
PropStream, that's a document or that's a process, right?
Right.
Pulling a list from ListSource, GeoPoint, cleaning, skip tracing, that's a process.
Mhm.
So again, this is all part of the administrative that again people don't really talk about because it's let's just face it, it's not fun. Like
No, it's not.
nobody wants to be time blocking 2-3 hours like creating videos and just like putting in a process because you really have to think, right? Like
Mhm.
because if you think about it, many people get stuck here. This is where they can't really grow their business because they don't have these sort of things to hand off to somebody.
Right.
Or even if they do hire someone, um, it's like they don't know what's going on. So it'll just be a cycle
Mhm.
of that. So you really want to start as soon as you can, as soon as you start learning the process, which is kind of why we recommend like you should be part of every step of the business so that you understand
Mhm.
it and know how to explain it.
Right.
Yeah, it looks like Drunk here says standard operating procedures. Well, I just learned something. Yeah. Um, it's just SOP. Yeah, it's just a fancy word for documentation, really,
Mhm.
or like processing a documentation or documenting a process.
Right.
But that it's so underrated, and people actually hire tens of thousands, people that charge tens of thousands of dollars to set up your SOPs.
Yeah, 100%.
So if you start early, it'll be so much easier because then like anytime a new process comes up you can just start on
Yeah.
that. So
Right.
um you know that's a tough one that many people wait until like even they're closing 5 or 10 deals a month and maybe they don't even
Mhm.
have SOPs because they like it's a lot easier doing it on their own
Right.
than
Right.
having to document.
And that's the other thing too is that we're in a new age of technology, so putting
Right.
that together is a lot easier. So when you're starting your business, a lot of people say just write down your process. Well, there's sites like Loom. Instead of writing down your process,
Yep.
like walk through the process. So when you onboard somebody, you point them to that Loom video that shows how you're actually doing that. So
Yep.
you can put that as part of your training down.
Yeah.
So these are other technologies that you can leverage to help your SOPs, in your business. So you don't literally have to write out a PDF of things that you need to do step by step. You can,
Right.
do a video of that. So that cuts down on your time of putting that document together. It's just part of your process. You're just recording that process for you. So I think Loom and the technology of just videotaping yourself on, you don't even have to use your face. You just have to use the screenshot, right? And then maybe dub
Right.
over that and what you're doing and how you're doing it. That's it. So I know that technology is going to help you streamline your processes.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Tim. Glad you brought it up. Loom is a game changer. They do have a free plan, I think up to 25 videos. But I think even with like the next step, which is more videos or even unlimited, I think it's like $6 a month or
Hmm.
like definitely under $10 a month. Um, but I've utilized it where again, if you have your tasks that you have and like SOP sounds like really official,
Hmm.
so kind of going back to this question too is like it's a recipe to running your business, but it really is.
Hmm.
Um, you're documenting everything. And
Right.
a lot of times, like, it can be overwhelming because if you see like maybe a bigger company's SOPs, it's really dense. It's really like
Mm-hmm.
heavy. And it doesn't have to be like that way. What we're
Right.
saying is keeping it simple. And what Tim is saying is like, you don't have to write a lengthy document of everything. Just do a loom
Mm-hmm.
and maybe add some bullet points to that document and then attach the loom to it. Like that's what I do. That's what I've done in my 9 to 5 as well. Is instead of we'll have a guide with like Google Docs, but the loom is crucial because then processes change all the time. So
Right.
why don't you just kind of create? You can just create another loom video where it's like, hey, like walking them through the process. It's as if you're screen sharing. So Loom is super underrated. If you don't have it already, I totally recommend you guys get that and start small. Like I said, list out the tasks that you do in your business right now, like in a document, and then just add a Loom to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And then once you bring someone on, you can be like, hey, these are the list of the tasks that you do. Here's a Loom attached to it. Like it doesn't
Exactly.
have to be as complicated. I think we just like to overcomplicate things
Yeah. And
when it comes to that.
I think we think about it more of a corporate structure, on the old school way of doing things. Here's like a
Right.
manual, right, that you have
Right.
to sit there and read, and or they send you an email of a PDF that you have to go and read, or whatever the case may be. I mean,
Hmm.
we're in the age of technology, so we need to streamline the process as fast as we can. So
Right.
utilizing like Loom, or even communication with like Slack, or a Discord or something
Right.
like that, to bring your business to maybe streamline all these processes, will help you in the
Mhm.
long run for sure.
Yeah, definitely, and that's a key thing, that we didn't add here, but, like, communication, how like, once you start building a team, how are you gonna communicate with them?
Hmm.
I mean, there's people use WhatsApp, but it's
Hmm.
not as streamlined, as, like, say, a Slack, where maybe it may cost a little bit more, but there's just so much, flexibility when it comes to a tool like that, where you can, it doesn't matter what country someone is in, like you can always access this person through Slack. You have an
Right.
app for it.
Hmm.
And you can also even have calls from Slack too. So
Hmm.
that's really key. Obviously, Zoom is also a great tool to have for meetings. I think it's also free, but it comes with limitations as well. But this is great for meetings that you have with your team or whatever the case may be. So these are just like little tips, little tools that you can use part of your administrative tasks and teams that you'll build. But one other thing too is like regarding like your data is in managing it is your KPIs too, which
Hmm.
is you know that's something even myself I'm working on improving
Yeah. Me as
because
well.
KPIs tell you everything about your business
Hmm.
if you do it right. So that's where I'm trying to understand like okay what specific metrics do I need to look at to identify like all right this is what I need to do or like no things aren't going well in my business or things are going well in my business.
Hmm.
Obviously there's a lot more details in that and like um, and for those who don't know KPI stands for key performance indicators. So
Hmm.
a lot of times it's like you write like a spreadsheet of specific metrics that you want to meet. So if you're cold calling, right, like contact time or contact
Hmm.
percentage, like how many people did you how many dials did you have, and out of those dials, how many people did you actually speak with,
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. So I know that's something, Tim, that you're working on. But what sort of like is there any like small metrics that you've measured before in the when it came to like building your team or
Yeah. So I think it's important to put maybe KPIs into different categories, and then you have a broad one for your overall
Mhm,
business. Because you may have a KPI for, let's say, your cold callers, right? Or
mhm,
a KPI for, your disposition side,
mhm,
to reach how many buyers, or onboard so many buyers, right? And then from a larger scale, what are we looking at on how many calls we're making a day, what how many of those are converted to leads, and then how many leads did we close for the month, right? So
Hmm.
it then you're putting all these KPIs in the process so you can have, let's say, a dashboard of things that you can look at the end of the month and see what was working, what was not working, and kind of
Right.
get a feel of how you're going to shift your business to maximize uh, more revenue coming in, because you're seeing in your KPIs we're not we're not making as many calls this month, and that could
Right.
be because you lost an employee, or that could be you didn't have enough leads from on the marketing side, right? So
Right.
there's a lot of things that you can figure out with your KPIs that will allow you to move the needle forward with your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are all facts. As you and you'll notice people that actually succeed are the people that put in these systems beforehand,
Hmm.
to identify where are the holes in my business. And also, if you have as you're building a team, like you said, you can track down on like, this is usually my average, or this is like my goal, and we're hitting below that. Why is that?
Hmm.
It's these are kind of things as you start separating yourself from the day to day. Usually the KPIs are those that you kind of review as you step out, right? That's
Hmm.
the one thing where you want to make sure like the metrics are being hit.
Yeah,
But
100%.
it's for people that aren't data people, it's not really straightforward. It
Yeah,
can be a little complex. So
it could be. Yeah.
um, I would reach out, especially if you have your network. I would reach out to people that that are doing well, and maybe ask them like, "Hey, what
Hmm.
are your KPIs? Like, what are you measuring?" And you don't have to copy them on everything, but it's good to have like a something like some sort of standard, and then you can just tweak it as you go
Yeah.
with that. Because
Yeah.
depending on whatever marketing channels you have, you want to measure the SMS. Maybe you're doing ringless voicemails, cold
Hmm.
calling. There should be separate KPIs for that, so that
Hmm.
that you're tracking, or at least that's kind of how I've done it as well. Because again, that'll kind of tell you what direction your business should go, and what you
Hmm.
should focus on. So if I know most of my deals are coming from SMS
Hmm.
and I'm getting better success there, maybe the next time I close my deal, I want to go all in on that.
Hmm.
So that's kind of the stuff we're talking about. And I don't know in terms of resources where you could get free KPIs. I know they're out there, um, but just something to consider.
Yeah, I think a lot of people a lot of people kind of skip this over just because they just don't know how to do it. And you
Right.
can keep it simple, like for yourself. If it's just a one man show, then or one woman show, then
Hmm.
it's a situation where you you analyze, like, internally, like, okay, I made 1,000 calls today, how many of those calls turned into this, right? And then you can just do that
Right.
on a daily basis, and then use a notepad or your notebook on your laptop just to say, I made this calls, and keeping track of that, and then going back at the end of the week. And that's just one
Mm,
step. That's the first step, like, just start kind of analyzing that. And then
right.
even, tap into, like you said, tap into your network. Hey, I made so many calls, it looks like I talked to these many people, I had these many deals. What other KPIs can I look at, for my business? And just ask the question. And so you don't really have to get really kind of technical on the
Right.
KPIs. Eventually, as you grow, there's more KPIs that you'll have to do, and there's what's more important to you in the direction you want to go for your business. Then you'll put in the right KPIs for that. But as starting out, you can just kind of start out basic, and
Right.
and kind of grow. As you grow as a business, your KPIs will grow as well.
Yeah, and I think for anybody starting out, you want to start as simple when it comes
Hmm.
to all that, right? Like document what you can do it with a loom. Because then going back, you're going to thank yourself later. But
100%.
don't overcomplicate it. Keep it really, really simple. And, and referring to your KPIs, in terms of your goals, you want to start off with like, how much money do you want to make a month? What do you want to strive for? And then you can kind of like reverse engineer it from there, where if you kind of maybe do some simple math of like, okay, if I want to earn 30K a month in deals, what will that take? How many leads would I need to do that? So, as you start calling, you'll start identifying these things. And if you know, like, okay, I need to actually talk to 50 people to actually get a couple leads. And then, and this has led me to close a 20K in deal. So now you kind of know what sort of metrics to go off for, but always start with like kind of the long term goal of like, this is how much I want to make, and like reverse engineer it from there. That's kind of how I've started to take a look at it too. Instead of like doing it the hard way, is just reverse engineering it. But I know we're at the 30-minute mark.
Yep.
So just to kind of sum up, what we've talked about in terms of administrative, it's it's managing your data. So what, like
Right.
pulling lists, cleaning your data, having somewhere to store your data, right? We're also talking about like payroll or HR, hiring, budgeting, accounting, with like, say, a QuickBooks. And then the other most important thing is your documentation of like your process. So we talked about SOPs, but like what tasks do you do in your business, and just document it. Each thing that we just talked about is a really important part. And then KPIs. Start with your target salary, how many deals you want to close a month, and just reverse engineer it from there. And things, things may get complicated, but just ask around, ask people in your network, as we said. And, I think you'll start realizing that, it's really not that complicated. I think we just make it complicated because it's just what we do. So,
Right. Right.
anything you kind of wanted to leave the people with, Tim, before we
N-
hop off?
No, I think, these are important aspects. This is kind of, we have a 6 series kind of process. So this is just
Yeah.
one of the processes within wholesaling that is crucial to be successful. And, you can, I'm sure we'll have it in the show notes as well too. But
Hmm.
I think this is, really important process, because a lot of people don't think about this when they start in wholesaling.
Right.
They just talking about,
Right.
hey, how do I make these calls? How do I get a deal? They don't think about like long term of their business, and
Right.
you want to turn it into a business.
Yeah, exactly. And you want to go in with that mindset, but of course, starting out, like, yeah, you
Sure,
want to talk to sellers, but
of
as you
course.
start getting involved in the business, so
Yep,
you want to
absolutely.
start this process as soon as possible. But really, really great conversations. I think, you mentioned tons of gems out there that I think people starting off who maybe weren't aware. I mean, some person here didn't know what SOP meant, so
Hmm.
somebody took away something from it.
That's great.
Um, but next week we'll be talking marketing. I think that's kind of a more sexier term, where it's like,
Right,
all right,
right.
this is what I'm selecting to market to the marketing channels that I can utilize.
Hmm.
You already got the clean data. Now where do you
Hmm.
put it? So there's direct mail, cold calling, SMS. We're going to talk about all of that stuff next week. So make sure you tune in for that. It's going to be really exciting. As Tim mentioned, this is a 6-part series. We're going to touch pretty much every sector of a wholesaling business, each kind of sub team that is really necessary to and crucial to running your business. So hope you guys got a lot out of it. We'll catch you guys next week, same time. Tim, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah,
Make
pleasure.
sure to
Let's
follow
go.
us on IG, hit the like
100%.
button, subscribe, and you guys have a great day. Catch you
All
guys
right.
next week.
See you guys.
Peace.